Okay, guys, I'm sorry that I was not able to review with you all, but I just thought it would be helpful for me to go over this with you. So all I would do is basically read to you, the definitions, and they are in the glossary of your book. Let's just look at this one. So, gesture drawing. This is the definition for it. Because you'd have to actually read it instead of it within the chapter instead of it being the back of the book. So, gesture drawing, this drawing technique aims to identify and react to the expressive characteristics of a form. Capturing the energy of the moment is the essential goal. Here are the images. Now, let me explain to you on the test. For example, for graphite, that one I could either show this image or the image called self-portrait, which if it's in your book, you can look it up and you'll see it's there. So I could use either of those. Let's keep going down. Number 2, that is color pencil. So again, I could either use this image on your test or piece of cake, which was another example. Number 3, this one is going to be charcoal, and I could use this or the self-portrait and profile to the left. Number 4 is this one. I could use this example with the pastel stick, so it's pastel, by the way, or the tub by Degas. And for number 5, we have this ink drawing. I could use this one, leaf from an album of bamboo drawings. Okay, so now let's look at 2.2. So these are all located. It looks like all of those are definitions in your glossary. There's nothing I've typed up in blue. So now for your images. I could either use this image, the encaustic here, or portrait of a boy. This one is tempera. You know that because of the eggs. So either this one, and you know this is encaustic because of the heat gun. That would be a good hint. There's blocks of wax back there. This has an eggshell. Christina's World is your example from your book for tempera. Okay, girl in a chair. That is for oil painting. Here are tubes of oil. I'm not going to try and confuse you with this one and acrylic because acrylic could look really similar. So I would not do that. Just you pick out, I'll not let definitions or images kind of be confusing for you. So you just know that. And I could see someone say it looked like acrylic to me, but it's oil. And one reason why I know that is also because of the 2 jars back here. Those little bottles are used to mix in with strictly oils, not acrylics. Okay, so this one is watercolor and gouache, Gouache. It's in your book, A Young Hare. You can see there's a watercolor sketch pad, a watercolor set, a little cup of water. Here's your acrylic. So this is, I was really trying to make it separate from oil. So there's little jars of acrylic paint. A lot of people will even do impasto with acrylics and squirt it out with like these little, I guess these little bottles. And artists don't really do that with oil. I've never seen that. So that's unique to acrylics. Number 6 has a painted tree with buttons glued onto the canvas. So this is for mixed media. Fraser's Hog K number 18 would be from your book. Spray paint, you got a spray can right there. And Banksy again is the image for that. Okay, so for 2.3, all of these definitions are in your glossary except for registration. Registration is a method of correlating overlapping colors on one single image. There are many different styles and types of registration, many of which employ the alignment of specific marks. So if you're confused as to what that is, let me show you real quick. All right, well, these are all pretty good examples. So basically that is, you create these little tick marks so you know where to put the paper and where to, and that is really important because in these examples show you that too. So you know you're aligning the paper where it needs to be on top of that block. And so if you do more than one color, the colors are going to be positioned correctly and not be spread out and in an awkward spot. So, so hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see, so your images. Okay, this is a wood block because they've got the cutting tools. This is linoleum actually, but it's number one is called relief. You want to have relief here, the great wave off the shore of Canagua. All right, Albert Dürer. For this one, you've got Adam and Eve as your example. Let me make sure you have this. It's engraving. You could tell it's engraving because the little tiny block here, and these little tools are used to kind of beat it in. And actually, this is even an engraving that texture's been put into the metal. Okay, so the next one is called an etching, and this is by Rembrandt. It's an Adam and Eve image. The way you would know this is etching is that there's this black, what we call ground, heated and painted onto the metal. What the artist is doing is taking that needle and scratching it off to expose the metal underneath, and then give it an acid bath. They feather it to get the air bubbles out, and then the image is just basically chemically etched into it. But and that's why it's called etching. Okay, number 4. This is aquatint, and the aquatint process uses a really special powder, and they heat it up to make the image. The giant is your example for that. All right, number 5 is lithography. They use these really large stones, and it's a kind of a chemical water oil based technique that actually makes the image, it's not permanent, but makes the image into the stone. You can clean it with some turp and reuse it again. And anyway, that's a whole nother process. But here they're preparing the stone before it goes through the press. Okay, so number 6 is 6 is silk screen. They have the ink, and they have what we call a wedge, and they're pushing the ink through the open areas on that screen. The 4 Marilyns by Andy Warhol is your example from your book, so I could use the Marilyns or this one, as with all of these. Number 7 is monotype, Kepler underneath. So here she created a painting of flowers. She put the paper on top of the painting and pulled it up, and she made a print. But it's unique, there's only one of those. All right, lastly, for 2.4, you will look up all of these in your glossary. And then for your examples, for number 1, you have earthworks. This is the spiral jetty. It could be that I use the spiral jetty, the earthwork that's at Salt Lake, or this one, the stack with the stacking of the rocks. Number 2 is constructivism, and that is a great example of it because it looks machine made, like factory made. It doesn't have the same quality as like cutting for marble or sculpting with clay, which was the traditional way of making a sculpture. Your example is the physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living, and it's a taxidermy shark, which doesn't fit the typical materials for art making. It's definitely not traditional. Okay, so for number 3, what I want you to put is assemblage, and the liberation of Aunt Jemima is a great example for that one. Here it looks like they took wooden board games and just kind of cut them and built them together. They assembled them together. So I could use this or Aunt Jemima. The bull's head, that is a ready-made, and the chairs were ready-mades. They were basically found objects that were put together. They weren't altered, they're just basically arranged by the artist, but those are the examples for ready-made. Okay, and then we have kinetic, which is the light prop for an electric stage, and here's an artist who makes this enormous kinetic sculpture that looks, when the wind blows, it makes it look like a jellyfish. And then the Asian field is the large clay figurative installation in your book. For some installations are exterior and some are interior, and they basically just change the overall environment. So just know that all of these questions are going to be multiple choice. I'll have vocabulary and images. So it's very similar to what you did the first test, with the exception of your examples. Instead of just using piece of cake, I could use piece of cake, or I could use this image of the actual material the artist uses. And that's really the main difference. Okay, that's it.